I was born in St. Edward's Hospital in New Albany, Indiana. My mom and dad, I think they were in their early 20s when they got married. As far as I remember, my mom and dad said they they didn't call it get saved because they went to the Christian church. But from that time on, they took everybody to the church. I was 2 weeks old when they took me to church. That's how we got started. Well, we moved out to Oak Grove Road when I was 2.5. We lived next door to my grandma and grandpa, Lonnie Bullington. And we went to the Christian church down in Hardingsburg, which I got my cradle roll right here, guys. And I've kept it all these years. The first time I really remember about it was the first prayer I had. My mom was in the hospital having my brother, and we were staying at my dad's sister's house. My mom was having the baby. And when they got ready to take him home, unbeknownst to us girls, he'd already taken mom and the baby home. But I had been being a brat, like the baby in the family was. And I said, I don't want him to go there. Don't you dare take him home. And so when Dad took her home, I thought I had caused it. And I remember Dad taking him home, and I was crying and I was praying. And I said, Lord, if you just let my mom come home, he can come home too. And that's the first time I ever remember praying at 4 years old. We went to school down at Hardingsburg, but at one point they made everybody go to their own county. And I don't know, Mom had went to a revival at the Church of Christ, and her dad went to the Church of Christ at Crossroads, but then she decided to move to Oak Grove. And it was a small church, and we had a minister that didn't come every week, but there might have been, maybe if we were lucky, 15 people there or less. So that was that way most of the time until I turned 15. And that's when this one comes in. This is not the first one, but Dave and Donna Roberts were the minister at the Valeene Christian Church. And we were outside playing one day, and he drove through and he stopped and said, hey, if I come and pick you up, will you guys like to come to Bible school? And so that's how I got introduced to Valeene. And so we did. And of course, you know the story. At one point, these two guys Valeene guys come to the Bible school because they heard there was cute girls there. And the next thing you know, I started dating my former husband, and then we transferred to the old sheep barn that they talk about, the old church that's no longer there. But that was what really taught me that I could have a personal relationship with God, was when I got down to that old sheep barn. I had never experienced that before. I didn't know you could talk to him. I mean, I knew you read your Bible and you pray and all of this, but I just didn't know, you know. And of course, I got in trouble when I did get baptized, because I went to Wonder Valley, and it's out by West Washington School in the country. And they always said, you go right away. So after the service that night, we went right away, because I gave my life to the Lord at 14 years old. And they piled us all in the back of a pickup truck, and we went down to a creek in the middle of the night, and I got baptized to the headlights of a pickup truck. And so Mom was disappointed because she didn't get to see it, but it stuck with me all this time. I was still going to the Christian church when I got baptized, and it was different, because you have to remember, we went to a church all growing up, you know, from 3rd grade on, where, you know, you just did the same thing every week. There wasn't hardly any kids there. We didn't have any music. So, you know, because they didn't believe in having music to go with it. So when I got down to the Valeene Christian Church for their Bible school, it was different than I had remembered that from when I was littler, and how much I loved going to church. But that was the beginning of, oh, you can have a relationship with God, because I had the availability to all the different preachers and the women, the wife, you know, they were the classes and all the stuff that I didn't have before. So that's how I got started with Wonder Valley and got baptized. And then from there, when I turned 15, I ended up over at the sheep bar. Well, I really, really loved God and I served Him, but like so many people, I didn't listen, and I ended up getting married at 16 because I was disobedient to God, and we had our first child was on the way before the marriage. So my mom was really funny. I got married at the Oak Grove Church, and Emmett Manship married us. I married the kid's dad, and she decided that we should get married to Trust and Obey, walking down the aisle. And after it was over, she had them all sing Whiter Than Snow. So she had a sense of humor too. Back then, they wouldn't let you go to school if you were pregnant, even though we were married. See, they can do that now. But what I did was 11 years later, without studying, I went and took the test and passed it, and I got a GED. Of course, in those years, you know, I was mad at God because I lost my husband in the church to somebody else, and I got mad at God. I was so mad at Him. I went to church. I did everything I was supposed to do, which was a lie. And you let Him take my husband away, because I was brokenhearted. Simply really was. And then I realized, oh, it's not God's fault. He gives everybody a free choice. And so I had to get over I went to church every time. I was still mad at Him though. But, you know, sort of like kids and parents. And, but yeah, so and that's through those times, that's when I even got closer to God. Because the scriptures where He says, I'm with you always, and I'm with you when you go through these things, it's really true. He really does. When you're going through that and you have a Christian family, church family, you've got somebody there all the time. You don't have to, like I said, you don't have to go through it alone. Not only is God there, the whole church is there for you. And so that helped me to still want to go instead of going the other way. And so I just kept going. Oh, they were there for me 100%. Yeah. And yeah, I just wasn't, you know, used to it. Matter of fact, when my first husband left, almost all of his family was at my second wedding. They were on one side. Matter of fact, I wore the wedding dress that Valeene had when she married John. And then my husband, he wore Alan Strange's suit, and Linda Key made the wedding cake. You see how it goes. They were all there. So that's what I call supportive. When I got remarried, Bill and I went to that one where Chris Lindley preaches out. We went there for a while, and Brother Bennett was the minister then. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but he was a wonderful gentleman. And we went there, but then he got in a nursing home, and then he died, and so then it wasn't the same. And so then we went to the Valeene Wesleyan. His mother came to live with us, and come Sundays, they'd come up with a reason why we couldn't go to church anymore. And before I knew it, there was 8 months and we didn't go to church, and my whole life fell apart because we weren't where we were supposed to be. And then finally one day we went back to church with help from my daughter getting us started back, because she went to the youth. Rex Manship would pick her up and take her to the Pale on the hill where Scott and Nancy lives now. And then from there we started going back. And I told myself then, I said, you can never let anybody else convince you that you don't need to go and serve the Lord. Because if you don't go, me personally, if I don't go, it doesn't take long for you to feel empty. And then it gets easier and easier not to serve the Lord. And I think that would be a pretty poor way to repay the Lord's goodness. And so I always say, you know, no matter what, you keep your faith, even if the whole family doesn't go. And then we ended up back down here, and I stayed here until I moved to California. My husband worked a job that I never got to see him. He worked out on the road, and I'd see him maybe 2 or 3 days a month. Well, and I wasn't working anymore. I was staying home. So that made it bad. And he said, well, if I was to get a job and I had to move, would you go with me if I could get a job where I could come home? And he got one out in California where he had been working on the road at. But I already had my church picked out before I went. Because if you don't have a church family, you don't have anybody. And I'm going to a place where I know nobody but my husband. And if I didn't have God with me on the journey, it just wouldn't work out. So I looked on the internet to see what they had. They didn't have any Wesleyan churches in the area, but they had a Nazarene. And that was close enough, so then I went there. We went in 1997, and I felt comfortable there. I felt really good there, and I got involved with the church and did all kinds of stuff within the church. We put on plays. I sang in the choir. He was at first, but then he got to looking. You know how people look at people? Because he wasn't raised in a church. He never went to church. And he saw that, okay, the time changes. You know, when it goes forward, springs back. They were taking and sending out postcards with stamps on them. And he said, you're sending out 750 cards. Why can't you just make an announcement? That's not very good stewardship of your money. So, but the final straw was I was in a play for Easter. And I had a really great time. And we had just seen the thing about the money changers, you know, where he goes through and does all that. And there was a set of women in the back, and they were selling stuff for Mother's Day, early for Mother's Day. But they were announcing it from the play right after they did the money changers. And he said, this is it. I can't do it. But I never quit. I just kept going. And yes, I mean, we all are not perfect by no means. But you don't quit. You make a difference. I was in an area that I'd never been in my life. I didn't know anybody else's opinion on anything. What's Rick Warren that wrote? His mother was the librarian at our church, and my choir teacher, he ended up doing all kinds of gospel music and all this stuff, and then he left, and then we got another choir director in, and they started teaching real music, so we learned how you were supposed to sing and different stuff, and that was fun. And then once a quarter, we had all the churches come together, because we had the Korean church, the Hispanic church, the traditional church, and the Philippines, I think it was. There was 4 different ones. And so we would have a meal after church, and everybody would make the food of their culture, and you get to see all of the ones and talk to them and do stuff. And I liked that kind of thing. So we got to know the whole people. Yeah, that was great. I liked that. And so I got to see a side of the world that I'd never seen before. Well, sad to say, my husband committed suicide, and I came home. Well, it didn't mess my faith up. I knew my husband was bipolar, and I found out afterwards that he had stopped taking his medicine for whatever reason. And so I know that that was probably the reason he did what he did, because he wasn't thinking right. Why he ever did it, you know, I will never know what he was thinking. But I know he loved me, and so I didn't ever worry about that. I'm going to miss him the rest of my life. We were married 26 years. Well, the reason was, and I don't want to sound like I'm bashing my ex-husband, but we were young when we got married, and I don't really think he knew how to love somebody. And my husband, second husband, he did. I knew I was loved. I knew that he couldn't help what he was going through, but I always felt loved. He always went to church with me off and on most of the time in the whole 26 years. So he was there right beside me the whole time up until the end, except, you know, like when he was working on the road. So he was there. He was there for my kids. If they had a teachers meeting, he was right there. If he was teaching them something, he taught the kids how to ride motorcycles. He took my daughter to go fishing. I mean, he was a dad to them. And I know it hurts their biological dad, and I say that to distinguish between the two, not to, but he was never there because once he left, he really hasn't seen him that many times through the years. So to them, that's their dad. This is where God comes in. I wasn't planning on any of this, and now I don't have his income. I had a job out there, and so I was going to had to leave that. I had to wait to get his life insurance to come home. So now I've got to move a whole house full of stuff and 2 cars to Indiana and nowhere to live. And so I said, okay, I got to find somewhere. And I was talking to my brother, and he said, well, my step-aunt lives next door to where my brother Brian lives. And he got to talking to them, and they said they'd rent me the house because it was empty because my step-aunt had moved up in a little cabin by her daughters. And so I told them what I could pay, and they said, okay. And so in that length of time, just that few minutes, because I was praying the whole time, like, Lord, I know you're going to figure this out because I sure can't. And I got it all. Got his insurance check, paid for a big moving truck to move everything there. I got a truck to take the cars home. And just that quick, I had a place to live, and everything was taken care of. And I said, well, we've got to hurry up and get there because I got to go to church. So I was back maybe less than 2 weeks, and then I said, okay, I got to go to Valeene. And everybody was trying to get me to go to other churches closer and all of this. I said, no, Valeene's home. And so that's I've been there ever since. I've been back for 15 years in June, and I've been coming here for that whole time. A little over 2 years and 3 months into renting this house, they decided to sell it. And they wanted me to buy it, but I'm getting older, and I don't think I'd ever get a mortgage paid for, especially on limited income. So I said, no, I couldn't do it. So I had to find a place. And so I saw one in the paper, and then I was asking people, and other people it was showing me one, and ended up we were all doing the same one. And I said, well, that's a God for sure. And I went to the guys, and they were from English, and their mother had moved up with them, but it used to be her house here in Paola. And so I said, well, I'm going to just be honest with you. I don't have a job. This is how much money I got in the bank. I'm going to be getting disability for Social Security, but I won't get it for 6 months. I sold my truck to help pay the rent. And I said, but if you'll take a chance on me, I'll rent it. I was there for 4 years and 3 months. And they tried to get me to buy it too because they decided to sell it. So now I'm saying, okay, what is this about selling it every time I get him one? Because it looks really nice after I get done. So now here I am. I got to find someplace else to live. And I said, okay, Lord, I'm going to tell you like this. Well, I'm not going to tell you anything. I just want you to listen to me. I said, I don't care if I have to live on the street or live with my kids because I don't want to. I said, or just be homeless. I said, I'm willing to do that if that's what you want me to do. But if otherwise, you're going to have to take care of it for me. And so I said, the last month I was over there, I didn't have, before I got my disability, I didn't have the money for the rent, which all the other stuff that happened in that time, just when I had a bill, the Lord would send the money. Now, nobody knew that I didn't have this bill paid or that bill paid, and people in my family who'd never given me money in their life sent me money. And I always got just enough to pay the bills and enough to go out with the ladies on Sunday after church to eat. And as soon as that was done, then there was no money again until I needed it again. And that did that for 6 months. And then when I got the check, it just stopped automatically. Before anybody even knew I had gotten the check, it just stopped. I mean, how can you deny God for that? That's everything. Oh, that's coincidence. That's not a coincidence. And I get made fun of a lot of times in my family because they said that I have too high a standards, that nobody can live up to them. But you know what? I don't expect them to live up to them. I expect them to have their own journey. But I'm not going to let people change who I am in my walk. And then I had to find another place. And so then I got on Facebook and I said, they're selling the house I'm in. Does anybody have anything that I could rent? And lo and behold, Nancy Manship and Scott had the place that I'm renting now. And they said, we didn't know you needed anything. We'll rent it to you and I will be. And I said, well, here's the deal. I said, if I get in here, are you going to sell it in a couple of years? And he said, no, you can stay here as long as you pay the rent. And I said, okay, until the body bag comes. And she said, oh, hush. And so I'll be there 9 years, July, I'll be there 9 years in that. Yeah. It's like, and so every time I needed a place, and I got it within 2 weeks of each time of when they told me I had to move. Now, when do you ever find anything that quick? I had triple bypass surgery a year ago, March 31st, and I just felt God the whole time I was in the hospital. I wasn't scared at all, and they came in and they asked you what's the most important thing to you, and I think they looked at me crazy because I said God, and they wrote it on the board. And then when people came in, I started talking to them, and everybody had their first names were people in my family. I mean, everybody. And then I started talking to them, and then they're not allowed to talk about religion unless you do. So then they would start to talk to me the whole time I was in there. And then I even had one young man. They were all students, a lot of them. And I said, man, you look so much like my nephew. And he looked at me and he goes, huh? And he said, well, do you have a picture of your nephew? And I said, yeah, because he said, where's he from? And I said, he's from Amman, Jordan. He said, that's where I'm from. And he said, that guy there, I think I know him, that other guy. And I said, things like that happened the whole time I was in there. So I was not scared because I knew the Lord was with me, and he was sending people to cheer me up the whole time I was there. And there was too many first names because every one of them, not just every one of them was one of my family members' names, cousins, aunts, uncles, they were all in there. And I just felt like I'd been to church. And those kind of things has happened to me my whole life. Well, I would tell them first to read your Bible, because without that, without me being in church all my life and knowing the Bible, I wouldn't have had this faith when I was going through this. But he's always said that he's there for us. He's always said that, he'll forgive us, just come to him and repent. Knowing that stuff makes all the difference. So if you're young, read your Bible, get with a church if you can, and don't say, okay, I just got to give up because I made a mistake, because we're all going to make mistakes. There's not one person in that church that didn't have to come to God and say, Lord, save me. I'm a sinner.